Yeah, I'll continue with this. Some people ask me some really good questions, and I want to address all this, but I'll wait a little bit. This question about flower, Ram and Bob, please remind me. And the question, what's your name? Michael. Michael just asked about how to deal with certain emotions. Very important. So please remind me if it doesn't come up. Please remind me to bring it up. Okay. Okay. So where did we get to? Yes. So therefore, dependent arising addresses the existence of phenomena from an affirmative perspective. Dependence on designation by name and thought refers to the fact that a phenomenon is designated by a name and a conceptual consciousness, a thought, in dependence on the basis of designation, the phenomenon's parts, right? So, of course, saying, for instance, I'm a sister, I also do that in dependence on my siblings. However, it's also in relation to my body and my mind, of course. So just because I don't mention them in this picture, it's not saying that it's not always also on the basis of mind and body. I mean, you cannot leave these out. But it's also in relation to other things, such as parents and, factors surrounding us, the environment and so forth. Okay, so you need those. It's not like you're creating something out of nothing. You have a term, some kind of symbol that you use. You have a conceptual consciousness, you need thought to be able to label, and you need a basis for labeling, right? Okay. A flower, for example, exists in dependence on a conceptual consciousness, designating flower on the basis of a stem, leaves, blossom, etc., that are arranged in a specific way and perform particular functions. Now, whether you call it flower or you use your own language, that's not the point, right? That was just the discussion I had with Ram and Bob. So we just use a little different symbolism. Whether we refer to it as a flower or not depends on, does it mean, like, do we agree on the characteristics, the definition, the defining characteristics of what makes that a flower and not a watch, right? Which takes us to James' question. Do we need a flowerness? Do we need a flowerness to determine this is a flower or not? But we still need to get to this snake person down here. Then I think it'll be answered even better. Okay, all right. Therefore, exists the dependence on a conceptual consciousness in the case of the flower. We call it flower, for instance. In our thoughts, we refer to it as flower. Right? We need something to get at the object. In this case, it's the word flower, for instance. So this is labeled on the basis of a stem, leaves, blossom, etc., that are arranged in a specific way. I'm not talking about blossom over here, stem over there. We wouldn't call that a flower, but it's arranged in a certain way and performs particular functions. Okay, so the functions are also the basis of designation. The parts that are arranged in a specific way and the functions that are therefore possible. All those are the basis of designation. On the basis of that, I may label it flower. Okay, but another living being may label it food. Right? A monkey, possibly. I've seen them. I've not exactly seen them eat those, but there's a different type that they really like to eat. So, for them, is that a flower you put in the vase? Are you kidding me? You grab it off the table as fast as you can and then you run and eat it. Right? Totally different label. Yeah? Okay. The flower exists because the conceptual consciousness labels it flower in dependence on its basis of designation, and if it was not labeled a flower, it would not be one. If someone, I'm not saying because you don't label it, it's not a flower, because there may be others who label it flower, but if there were no one to label it flower, it wouldn't be a flower. Simple as that, right? Well, okay. Independence on the appearance of the basis of designation of the flower, a labeling consciousness arises that thinks, for instance, there's a flower. Okay. Another example, okay, go back to that. Because the flower is like something that grows in nature. $100 unfortunately, it doesn't grow in nature, right? So it's really something man-made. So we distinguish between naturally occurring phenomena and man-made phenomena. So another example is a $100 bill. Due to a specific quality of paper, engraving, and coloring, the United States Mint labels $100 on a piece of paper, thereby giving it a specific value. The $100 bill does not exist from its own side, but in dependence on such designation by name and thought. So we're not saying it doesn't have the value, but not inherent in it. That's all we're saying. All we're denying, we're not denying that it has the value of $100, but it's not inherent in it. We need a mind that labels it. Okay, $100. Yeah, there's the guy chasing it. But it seems like, oh, it's kind of calling me, pick me up quickly before someone else does. It seems like it's got that $100-ness kind of shouting at me. The value is kind of inherent in that. Similarly, the I exists in dependence on a conceptual consciousness designating I on the basis of a body, a mental consciousness, and so forth, which are karmically connected. Our mind and our body are, in this life, karmically connected. Okay? In the sense that our actions from a previous life determined that this body connected with this mind. And when that karma is exhausted, not even a Buddha can keep you alive. Mental consciousness leaves. There's an expiration date to the karma that keeps us in this. It comes with a certain time. You can die before that, of course, due to other circumstances. However, every life, every karma, basically, that determines the life as a human, for instance, comes with a certain time. And that cannot be extended. Yeah? And so sometimes people, they just drop dead. There's no disease, there's nothing. So from a Buddhist point of view, that shows the karma is just finished with this body. And the mental consciousness leaves the body. Okay. Which are karmically connected and perform particular functions or activities, mind and body. So they perform certain functions and activities. The I exists because a conceptual consciousness labels I independence on its basis of designation, and other than the merely designated or conventionally existent I, no self can be found within the body and mind, body or mind. So, to give you an example, I want to write a letter. Okay, so now I start writing a letter. What happens is there's a mental consciousness thinking, I've left it for pretty long, I better write this letter now. So there's the wish to write a letter. There are parts of the brain that now become active and cause the movements in my arms to pick up the pen and start writing. So on the basis of that mental consciousness, the parts of the brain that are active, the arm, the fingers, all of those, I label, I write a letter. I is labeled on the basis of these parts, and writing a letter is labeled on the activity. It seems to us as if all those, the brain and all this is active, and they're writing, and on top of that, some I is being picked up, and it also writes. Right? It seems to us that it's not that the I is merely labeled on the basis of this process that I just described. A mental consciousness thinks, I'm writing a letter. That's the I. And therefore there's an I. It's a valid label. Because what means writing a letter means to me, and what is happening in that process can be called, thus qualified to be described as I write a letter. So it's a correct label given. Therefore, the I exists and the writing of the letter exists. But if there weren't that label, it wouldn't. If someone, it doesn't have to be me to label, if someone else labeled, if there weren't the thought, I'm writing a letter, there would not be an I, and there would not be a writing a letter. Right? Okay, so that's what we're saying. So I'm doing this, that, and the other. We label it on the basis of something that is considered to be part of this particular person. And since it's seen from my perspective, my mental consciousness labels I do so. And that I, other than the one that is labeled, anything more than that which is labeled cannot be found. But it seems there is more than that. It seems that there is this I that's picking up the letter now. And if you criticize it, let's say my handwriting is pretty all over the place. So you're criticizing my handwriting and my spelling and everything. So you're looking at it, oh, you're so stupid, right? Why do I feel hurt? If I'm really stupid, you're just telling me the truth. And stupid, you're addressing my handwriting, and if it's all over the place and I make lots of silly mistakes, you're telling me the truth. You're not saying I'm stupid in all areas. But to me, it seems that stupid is more than just that aspect, and it's me. I am just being hurt. Do you hurt my feeling? If you ask me, which feeling has been hurt? My happy feeling. Well, my happy feeling has been hurt. In the sense, it's just not there. It hasn't been hurt, literally. It's just not there because I feel upset right now. But I can't even pinpoint what has been hurt. It's just me thinking, how dare he says that? How dare he says so? How dare? You know, it's like it's all a creation of our own mind. If it was the truth, if it's not the truth, it doesn't make me stupid. He's just plainly wrong. What do I care? He's got it wrong, right? I make mistakes. He makes mistakes. So, but if it's right, yeah, okay. He doesn't have to use that strong language, but that's his problem. It's his anger. I'm sorry, James. I'm just using it as an example. I'm saying hypothetically. So he doesn't have to use it. That's his problem. In the end, it's his problem. If someone insults us, it's their problem. We should have compassion for them, that they're driven by their anger. They're really harming themselves. Because anger always harms the person who's angry. Compassion always benefits the person who's got compassion. Right? Anger is a very disruptive, even physically. It's not good for your blood pressure. It's not good for the chemicals that are released in your body. It really harms you. So if someone is angry with me and out of anger acts, oh my God, the poor person really is harming themselves. It's like they're eating poison right now, expecting me to die, but it's not going to happen, sorry. Right? Yeah? So really our reaction is the opposite of what it should be. And no wonder we're experiencing the opposite of what we naturally want. Peace of mind. We're destroying our peace of mind. That's all Buddhism is saying. It's just saying we're just not getting it right. And it's all coming from our own mind. And there's so much freedom in that. Because it's all coming from my own mind, and that's the only thing I can transform. I'm no longer dependent on the weather and the food and this and that, and you can actually become totally independent of them. When they're there, you enjoy them, and when they're not there, it's okay. You find a different way, right? You enjoy them for what they are, and don't have unrealistic expectations. Oh, this guy is going to give me lasting happiness. No, not even the Buddha can give you lasting happiness, unless, right? Unless you're creating the causes for that. Okay, anyway. Okay, let's go back to this. Question and answers in 7 minutes.
So the conceptual consciousness and mental consciousness, are they same? Or
that's a good question. The conceptual consciousness and the mental consciousness. Well, in our case, they're pretty much, they're the same. In our case, so our mental consciousness right now is thoughts, as opposed to a directly experiencing mind. We don't have any directly experiencing mind right now that is a mental consciousness. We have directly experiencing sense consciousnesses. They could not be anything but directly experiencing consciousnesses. But our mental consciousness right now always depends on a certain image, mental image, generic image, and therefore all our mental consciousnesses are said to be conceptual minds or thoughts. Conceptual mind is just a fancy way of saying thought. Lama Tsongkhapa mentions in one of his texts that as ordinary beings we can have dreams, which are mental, that are direct perceptions. That is possible, to have a dream mind that is not a thinking mind, but that experiences directly. right? Shapes and colors and so forth. That is possible, but in our waking state, all our mental consciousnesses are thoughts. Yeah. The conceptual consciousness labels I every time it thinks of the I. Every time it has the thought, this is me. On the basis of the appearance of body or mind, I'm sick. On the basis of the body being sick. No, I didn't read this right. Every time it has the thought, this is me, on the basis of the appearance of body or mind. I'm sick on the basis of the body being sick. I meditate on the basis of the mind meditating, and so on. Right? These things happen, these activities are taking place, and then you label, I am sick, I'm meditating, I'm this, I'm that. That's the I. A conceptual consciousness, so a thought consciousness, in other words, designates the I. In the same way, conceptual consciousnesses, that is thoughts, label all other phenomena. Therefore, every time we think something is this or that, we're labeling. Every thought consciousness. Not everyone agrees with this, but it doesn't make sense to me any other way. I believe we label with every thought we have. This is this is that. And we reinforce our sense of reality. And our sense of reality changes when our thoughts change. Right? Okay. Yet although conceptual labeling is necessary for a phenomenon to exist, it is not by itself a sufficient requirement for existence. Not just labeling, you need more than that. Designation by consciousness must occur in relation to an appropriate basis of designation. That's why there's a difference between mistakenly labeling snake on the basis of a coiled speckled rope and labeling snake on the basis of the aggregates of what is conventionally accepted to be a snake. So that's the coiled speckled. It's not exactly speckled, but that's all I could find online. And the snake, it wasn't speckled, it was actually kind of beige, and I added these stripes with a pen. Anyway, in color it's a little clearer. All right, so therefore, okay, that is really important. The snake and the snake and the rope example. It's considered really important because it gives us a good sense that when you look at the rope, it's actually not that difficult. When you look at this rope, and there's the thought, this is a snake, right? This guy here, this is a snake. Can you find the snake somewhere in this object? Can you find a snakeness in this object? No, of course not. You take it apart and all you find is a rope. Now, other than the fact that conventionally we wouldn't call the snake an actual snake, they're still the same, that you can't find the snake. So even in the real snake, even in the object that we would conventionally call a snake, that you can't find the snake in that, does not differ from the fact that you can't find a snake in the rope either. You can't find a snakeness in the snake, just as you cannot find a snakeness in the rope. So this is a good example. You get a really healthy sense. Yeah, I can't find this thought. I can't find the snake in this object. And you just need to transfer it. The object is the rope, right? In the rope, I don't even have to look for it. Do you have a question? You're looking at me with a question mark. No, you, next to you. Yes, yes?
No, just could you explain that bit again?
Pardon?
Could you just explain that again?
I'll do that. Okay, good. That's great. Showing a question mark on your face is very helpful. All right, I'll explain it again. You see the guy here to the left? He's got a rope in front of him. So the example is usually given as a dark room, right? Not very bright light, there's not much light. And there's a rope that's coiled, as a snake would coil up. And then it's speckled. It looks like a snake. It's got the color and the pattern of a snake. So in that situation, or it's a rubber snake. You've seen those rubber snakes, right? And you go, snake, right? You have that thought, snake. So in that moment, there's a sense to our mind, there's an actual inherent snake. But if you just take the rope or the rubber snake, and if I ask you, search for the snakeness in that rubber snake or in that rope, what is your response? Pretty quickly, I won't find a snakeness. And then I say, well, look over there, there's a real snake. Stay away, but look over there, there's a real snake. In the same way as you can't find the snakeness in the rope, you can't find it in the snake either. Because in both cases we just labeled. But conventionally, one is a snake. We would all agree that it is a snake because that's what we call a snake. A snake is a living being that looks like this, that does this, that has this function, has this shape. So based on that, we say snake. Therefore, conventionally, it is a snake. The other one is a mistakenly labeled object because the basis of designation, the defining characteristics, the basis of the designation is really the defining characteristic of the object. On the basis of that, I label. But since the rope doesn't have these defining characteristics, I'm getting it wrong. Am I seeing a question mark on your face? Half question mark. No? This time you, from St. Petersburg. Yeah.
No.
No? Okay, good. Okay. All right. Okay, great. Great. All right. So, question and answers. We've got 15 minutes. You'll start.
So when the question came up for me, it was when you talked about karma, and you gave an example of being robbed because of past karma, maybe from this life or
Many lives ago.
So I wonder, I never hear the word victim in Buddhism. I wonder about the moment of the robbery. Is it in that moment when the person is doing an act and I'm being robbed? Am I a victim in this moment?
Okay.
In that moment?
Okay. So has everyone heard the question? She says never heard the word victim in Buddhism, and if you're being robbed, although it's the karma of a previous life, are you a victim?
Without using like blame.
Without using blame, yeah.
Without the thing about blaming the victim, it's not.
No. You're neither to be blamed, and you are a victim. Why are you not to be blamed? Because you didn't rob anyone. It was this other person long time ago, right? I'm not the person I was when I was 5. I'm no longer that person. I'm certainly not that person I was 10,000 lifetimes ago. Maybe 10,000 lifetimes ago. Just go back in history. How did people behave? I mean, they went to war. Man had to go to war. They had the little axes. You know, it wasn't like a machine gun over there or like a drone for that matter. No, you actually had to go up to the person. And that's the time and age we lived in. And let's face it, we're living in an environment, and the environment influences us. And if it's a kind of warrior-like culture that we grew up in, we may have gone out and killed someone in ancient Egypt, for instance. Now that karma can disappear, it can be purified, but sometimes it's just left over. I mean, disappear means either it has already ripened or it's purified. It's just some counteraction, some action of great generosity may just get rid of that karmic tendency or that karmic imprint. But let's say in your case, it's not. Are you to be blamed? No, you're not to be blamed. It's not you who did that. It's a former continuum you've totally changed. Your mind is totally different. The body's different anyway, right? So you're a victim in that moment. I would call you a victim. But is the cause only the person who robs you? No, there's also another cause. And are you bad because you get robbed and I don't get robbed? No, don't worry. I've got my own plenty of getting robbed karma. It just doesn't ripen in the same circumstances, right? There are different circumstances we find ourselves in. So, to address something that as a German person, I don't like to address to an Israeli person, but I might as well say it. The Holocaust. We all have the karma to die in a Holocaust. We all created the causes to be killed in a Holocaust. We've lived since beginning this time, really, it goes, right? We all created the karma. And in the situation of the Second World War, right? It's not that the Jewish people or the gypsies and whoever was killed, that they had bad karma and the rest of the world were so sacred so nothing happened. No, those were, because it's not just karma, it's also, you need a perpetrator, you need someone who engages in the genocide and so forth. And it happened because of all the circumstances. And were the people who were killed at that time victims? Yes. You can't blame them, because creating the cause in the past, that's totally, it's a different time. And unknowingly, no one deserves to suffer, because we don't do it on purpose. We believe it gives us happiness. We're just driven by that wrong sense of reality, first of all. It's a bit like you don't blame a person when they drink from the wrong tap and get sick a few years later. No, you didn't know better at the time. Now you know, but now, unfortunately, the karma has ripened. So therefore, no one deserves to suffer. And someone who is as a victim of a robbery I would call them a victim. On the conventional level, from a Buddhist point of view, you are a victim. But the good thing about karma is that there's some sense of, I can do something still. I can make sure this won't happen to me again, because now I make sure I'll never take something that hasn't been given. So that's the beauty of it. Being a victim sometimes means like you can't do anything. That's why in the Me Too movement, they use the word survivor. Yeah. Because it feels like I'm just a victim. I can't be anything else. But of course there's so much more. We just apply that term in relation to something having happened to us in that moment. We haven't done anything in that moment. Therefore, in that moment, we were a victim. But we're not a victim now, because it doesn't happen to us right now. We were in that moment. So to apply the term victim to that past situation, I think is also important, and not carry it on your shoulder, victim, right? Add like a big, because of a past event, victim now. That's the problem, right? We carry it with us. Okay, as long as I have siblings, I'm a sister. That's true. But I'm not getting robbed every day. If I get robbed, if there was like some kind of rule, rob me every day for the next 20 years, I'd be a victim for 20 years, right? To give you an absurd example. But the thing is, only then you are. But on top of that, you can change things. Now it's in your hand. The good thing is, when something like that happens to you, you make an effort that it doesn't happen to others. That's oftentimes our compassion. Our compassion comes through. A lot of people for whom something terrible happens, they start to make their life very meaningful. It's beautiful. They now go and help people who have been abused in that way, who've been sexually abused, who have been robbed and so forth. And in that way, they create the causes for others it not to happen again, and thereby also for themselves. Very clever way. So you're choosing this, you're turning this moment of victimhood around to create something greater, right? So that's why I think you're not a victim now. You were a victim then. Only then. Done. Gone. You're not a victim now. Right? Language is powerful. Language is very powerful, you know. What is that? Sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can do no harm. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I don't care so much about the sticks and stones, but sometimes the words are a lot worse, right? But yeah, our language. But I want to add something to that. Something I really learned from the Tibetans. We sometimes give too much weight. We're going to an extreme. Anyway, that's something we like to do, going into extremes, right? Carrying the word victim with us for a long time as an example. But another example is giving too much meaning to words. Now, what I learned from my classmates was that they gave us, sometimes they were really nasty with giving each other nasty names. You know what, my name was really nasty. My classmates, okay, I tell you the other names. One of us was called Acne. So they're not nice words, right? Someone was called Fatty. My name was Monkey Bum. Because when I first came here, you know, I was living with the nuns, and the nuns, they would do this thing. They'd take this cheap soap, go to a water tap in the morning, put this cheap soap and rub their faces, thinking, well, the more they rub, the cleaner it gets, So they were done and they looked clean. I did this and I was red. I looked like a monkey bum. So for the longest time, I didn't figure out, you just don't use the soap and rub for half an hour. It's not a good, not with this face, not with this skin. So they called me monkey bum. I had nicer names. They called me Animari as well. Geshe Kelsang, he called me Animari. He was really good friends with my teacher. You don't know Geshe Kelsang, never mind. He called me Animari. So the reddish nun, that was okay. Reddish for this part. But my classmates called me monkey bum. And initially I was like, oh, monkey bum. But I had watched the reaction of the British monk, who also got, for some time I had a British monk in my class. I watched his reaction and I learned from his mistakes. Because he got really upset when I gave him a nasty name. So I thought, okay, that's not a good idea to get upset. Okay, all right. So then I thought I'd just do the opposite. So next time someone asked me for my name, and there were enough classmates there, said my name is Monkey Bum. They never called me that again. So I got rid of that. But what was more so was, you see, that in the Tibetan society, it's like you call someone fat, it's just a word, right? Acne, it doesn't matter. It's not a nice word, but never mind, So I remember one time, someone called me Bango. Bango, you can hear from the sound, it doesn't sound like a gentle, sweet word, right? Bango, it actually means beggar. But it's also a nicer word for beggar, to be truthful, to be honest. So they called me Bango. And I was so hurt, this person called me Bango, So I went to my teacher and I said, such and such called me Bango, it's not, how can they call me that? That is so rude, right? And I kind of complained, like, oh, it just really hurt. And he was like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, you were hurt. Okay, yeah, okay. All right. And he said, okay, Bango, can you get me some tea? He called me Bango for 2 weeks. Right? And of course, when he started calling me, and I was like, of course. It's just a word. Why do I get upset about that word, right? Whatever their intention were, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just a word. And we're so obsessed with words. I say this jokingly, but honestly, there are no longer older people in the West. Everyone is elderly. Right? They're not old people. Everyone is elderly. You can't say to someone they're old. You can only say they're elderly. It doesn't make us younger. Right? It doesn't make us older if someone is told. So we are sometimes too caught up in the words other people. This whole PC thing is so difficult. Right? We always need to change the words. Okay? I know there's a purpose for it and I totally support it. But things like a person who has mental problems, insane, mad, no longer works. So now it's mentally impaired. But after a few years, that's going to be a harsh term. And we have to find another word. We have to find words all the time. And I understand, I'm totally for changing the terms. I don't want to hurt anyone's sentiments. But I'm just saying we shouldn't make our lives so difficult to get caught up in the words so much, right? This whole PC and not saying this and not saying that, that also led to this ridiculous scandal with this holiness, doing this, playing this children's game that grandparents play with their children, right? Saying, you want a sweet? Then you first give them a sweet. And if you have nothing left to give, you say, I give my tongue. Right? The tongue is not a sexual object in Tibetan culture. And for that, he wasn't talking to Westerners. He was filmed, and that was leaked by Chinese, by the way. And that was spread by the Chinese, by the way. So they loved it. But the point is that it's just a word. Of course, there's terrible abuse happening in many Western countries. But that was not an abuse that was taking place there. The child was thrilled. The mother was thrilled. The mother was right next to him. The mother was right next to this boy. And he was doing this children's play, like, now you can eat my tongue, right? He used mistakenly, we believe. Either it was a mistake, but I also talked to some people from Amdo. This is actually a game that comes from Amdo, and His Holiness was born in Amdo. So I talked to some people from Amdo, and one person suggested that there's also this version, suck my tongue as you would suck a sweet. You suck a sweet. So I've got nothing more to give you. I have no sweet to give you. So the last thing I give you is my tongue. I give you everything. So I give you my tongue to suck on, right? That's disgusting for us in the West with all the hygiene and with the sexual, but not for Tibetans. You know how Tibetans feed their children? That's baby food, traditionally. Oh, their noses, they suck the snot out of their noses. I know it's no, we don't do that, but they didn't have paper tissues, right? They sometimes they just go like that. Just the other day, I saw this beautiful Tibetan lady walking down the street as I was coming from Tushita. And she bows down and she goes, I was like, oh my God, I really come from a different culture, you know? It's just like this beautiful woman. I'm going, ha! But that's okay, you know, it's better for the environment for sure, with all this tissue paper we're using, right? And so Tibetan women, I've watched Tibetan women kind of taking their kids, you know, and then when they're nomads, they've got ticks and going through their hair, biting off the head and throwing it away. I know it's not very Buddhist, but you know, that's what ancient cultures have done, right? So, okay, that part I don't think they knew nowadays, definitely not, right? There's other ways to do this. But until recently, you didn't have mashed food. I mean, if you have dry meat, right? What are you going to do with dry meat and you have no way to get it small? You chew it first and you feed it to your child. I mean, breastfeeding, why is that not gross? Actually, it's also some fluid from your body. This time it comes from your mouth. And it's not unhealthy for the baby. So likewise with the tongue, right? If you've got some leftover food, you put your tongue in the baby's mouth so they can suck it off. It's just we don't do it. It's gross for us. Yeah? I mean, for other cultures, eating chicken is gross. For us, it's gross to eat, I don't know, worms. In other cultures, it's totally normal. Likewise, to put your tongue in the... So therefore, if you understand all this, it was not in any way inappropriate to use this suck my tongue. Not at all. But then what do we make from it? It's a word that is used in a different context, in a different cultural context. So that's our problem in the West now. I see this as a real big problem, getting caught up in so many words. But of course, we can't change the world. Well, we can change ourselves. Understand that in the end, they're words, and therefore, they don't carry that much weight. Sorry, I've gone a little bit off topic here, but I think it's important. It really, if someone calls me a jerk, so what? It doesn't make me a jerk. And if I'm a jerk, thank you for letting me know. That's anyway a big thing. Oftentimes people ask me, how about criticizing others? Is that okay? Right? They always ask this question, which is a good question. Should I criticize another person? This should be answered. But they never ask, how can I deal with criticism? So actually, it's really good to be criticized. It's a good thing. Because I have so many shortcomings that I just can't see. And I have this really good friend, this nun, who criticizes me a lot. Right? She's very straightforward. She's the most honest person. I love her to bits. She's so kind. Whenever there's help, someone needs help, she does it. She doesn't need any praise. Very silently, she does what needs to be done. She's very straightforward. And when I do something that is seen as weird in Tibetan eyes, for instance, I mean, there's still sometimes things that a Tibetan wouldn't do, right? And she points it out to me. I wouldn't have noticed. I don't even notice that I did it. And I'm always grateful. I always say, thank you. Oh, I'm so glad you tell me. Right? She always does that. And I'm very grateful. And if I say something to her, right? If I say something to her, she's just like, oh, I never knew, right? So we really learn a lot from each other because we come from such different cultures. And we have this rule, we criticize each other. It doesn't make me better or worse. I'm so grateful to anyone who points out my mistakes, because I don't see them. So it's so kind if other people criticize us, isn't it? And we have to look at it and go, is it true or not? Sometimes it's a mixture. Okay, so that part is true. That part, no. They did what it wrong. Okay, let it go. It's like garbage, you know? It's like picking a fruit. Leave aside the peel and take the fruit. Like peeling a banana, right? Don't eat the peel, but take the fruit. So it's a bit like that. You treat criticism as a fruit. Check the pieces you can do something with and leave aside the rest, right? And words are just words. Come on, whether you call monkey bum or whatever. Biuku. Biuku. Okay. Anyway, all right. More questions. Someone I haven't. Yes. Yes, please.
Me?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. I wanted to ask about, you're talking about celestial beings, and like, even with the Buddha or Buddhas, they have like psychic powers.
Okay.
You know, their clairvoyance and clairvoyance.
Mm-hmm.
What
All
would-
knowing even.
Yeah. So what would like Buddhism say about all the unenlightened beings these days that also have psychic powers
Yes.
and gifts that
Yes.
they're sharing, and probably many in this room?
Yes. There are certain degrees of psychic powers, of course. Some people can know what's going to happen in the next hour. They can know what happens to a certain group of people. There are different levels. Now, from a Buddhist point of view, our mind, it's not surprising because our mind has the basic ability to know. And a Buddha is all-knowing simply because whatever is in the way to actualizing this ability of the mind is gone. Now for us, to give you a simple example, there are people who are totally obsessed with themselves, more than maybe we are. I mean, there are certain degrees, right? I mean, maybe I'm so extremely obsessed it couldn't get worse, and I have this fantasy. There are people who are worse. But let's assume there's someone totally obsessed about themselves. Just about themselves. It's very difficult for them to see other people. They always relate everything back to me. Oh, they're talking to each other. They're talking about me. They did this because they wanted to harm me. So you no longer see what's going on. You have a very distorted view of reality. But as you start letting go of that, you're not so busy preoccupied with yourself. You start watching others and you become a lot more perceptive. So you could call it almost psychic power in comparison to the person who is so self-centered. But it's this mind, the mind just has the ability to know, and you pick up more and more. And some people can pick up even more than that. And because everyone else can't do it, we call it psychic. But it's actually normal, except no one else can do it. So it's a normal ability. I have a very good friend who is really good at massages. Like she did this Thai massage thing, and she does cranial, and I don't know what they all call these different massages. She's so good, and sometimes she gives me a massage. And we talked about knowledge once, and she said, you know, I can feel this. And I'm like, I can't feel that. How do you feel that? It feels the same. And she said, it's just something you train yourself in. The mind has that ability to know, using that as an example. And I have just been trained to know certain things when I touch an arm. I know what is the difference between an arm that doesn't have the condition and an arm that has the condition. So then I thought, oh my God, that is so true. That is true for everything. As the moment we set our mind onto it, for a Tibetan doctor, you can recognize the very subtle, right? I mean, my Tibetan doctor just told me you haven't had dinner yesterday. And I was like, what? He knew it from my pulse. So in the same way, therefore, our mind has that ability. And as we train in love and compassion, and our focus is more on others, we can read people's mind, we can know, and there are different levels of becoming psychic that become deeper and greater and greater. So the lamas, the higher they go, the more psychic powers they have. And they can benefit us greatly with them. They tell us, don't go today. I remember I had to get a visa from Nepal. It was a 5-year visa. I don't remember the story. I had to go to Nepal. And I was in Tushita here. I was working here. I just become a nun. I was doing some work here before I entered the IBD. And someone else wanted to go to Nepal to get that visa. And they could go first because they had said they wanted to go first. And so I was waiting for them to go. But they then said, no, I don't want to go. You can go. So I went to one of my lamas, Kitty Tsinta Rinpoche, It's right here. He passed away some years ago, but he took care of me in an incredible way. He lived right next to where I lived. So I went to see him, and he said, go tonight. I wanted to go in 2 weeks. I didn't want to go. It was really hot. I didn't want to go right away, but I knew it was my turn. I could go now. And I said, Rinpoche, when should I go? He said, you go tonight. And I'm like, I don't want to go tonight. You know, it's like, I really don't want to go. And he's like, you want to get the visa? You go tonight. He said, you do this mantra. You do this mantra the whole time. Yeah, and I did this mantra the whole way. It was so hot. It was so hot. There were like a train here and another train here and then a bus and another bus and another bus, and I arrived in Kathmandu. I went straight to the embassy. I got my visa and I flew back. And what happened? Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated. Rajiv Gandhi, the Indian Prime Minister, was killed.
87,
Right?
88 that time.
Pardon?
1988, 87, that time I think.
87, 89, yeah, possible. I don't remember. He was killed. So the borders were closed. No more student visa until today. I don't think my teacher was part of the assassination. Right? How could he have known? I was one of the last people to get that visa. Last visa. I was so grateful. And it was the right time, everything. Amazing, right? So they have these abilities, and you really can't explain it. It's incredible. It's incredible. And they use it for our benefit. So yeah, there are people who are psychic. I totally believe it. It's just sometimes unfortunate when they use it to make a lot of money. But when they use it to benefit others, thank you.
And many come in and like they end up suppressing it and blocking it because no one around them
Believes
knows
it.
how to deal with it and stuff. You know?
Yeah, yeah. It's good to not talk about it, I guess, but to benefit others with it. It's good to use it. I mean, you can benefit people so greatly, right? So thank you. Yeah, that's an important question. You raised your hand. Yeah.
So this that we are studying with the basis of designation is the view of the Prasangika.
The view of what?
Of the Prasangika.
What did you say before that? Is the view of the
The
dependent
basis of
arising?
designation.
The view of dependent arising is a view the other school hold as well, except they don't accept all types of dependent arising. The Vaibhashika, Satantrika, and Chittamatra only believes in dependence on causes and conditions. The Madhyamika Svatantrika also believes the first one and dependence on parts. And the Prasangika accepts dependence on designation. In that, the other ones do say that there is designation, but they don't say that phenomena depend on designation in order to exist. That kind of dependence the other schools don't accept. So the last type, the last kind of dependent arising, as is explained here, that is unique to the Prasangika.
The Prasangika. So when we say that the Prasangika rejects self-characteristics at the ultimate level?
Self-characteristics, in the sense of like something existing in and of itself without depending on anything. So existing self-characterized or existing from its own side by way of its own character and nothing more. Yeah. So that they reject exactly.
They reject in the ultimate
Prasangika school.
Yeah.
But not in the other
But
schools.
the Svatantrika school doesn't reject in the ultimate analysis.
They only reject that phenomena exist ultimately, absolutely, that is independent of mind. They say, okay, it does, you need mind, but you don't need to designate. It just needs to appear to a mind for it to exist. But at the same time, it must have its own characteristic. So if you have those two, something exists by way of its own characteristic and you have a mind to perceive it, then it can exist. Right? And again, as James had the argument, if it didn't have its own existence, we wouldn't be able to perceive it as a table versus a wall, for instance. Therefore, it needs to appear to a mind, yes, but it also needs to have its self-characterized existence, yes. That would be the Svatantrika. That kind of feels right to us, to be honest. A little bit from there and a little bit from here. That's why we learn the Svatantrika school, to identify it as a school that falls slightly short of the way phenomena really exist. Okay, great. Sorry, I couldn't take some of your questions. I tried to be fair about that everyone gets the chance to ask a question, so sometimes you don't get to ask, but you will later on. Okay, great. Enjoy your lunch. Have a good break. Got 1 more minute, but never mind. Oh, no, I should actually, no, it's okay. Just go because, yeah. Oh, the discussion group. Oh, the discussion. Oh, yeah. Can I choose your questions? Anyone who has a suggestion, anything you want to, because you're pretty much, I haven't given it some thought. Okay. I could give it some thought in the break time, but anything, do you have something? Do you?
I had the question, just can you explain how collective karma works?
How collective karma, okay. How collective karma works. Okay, yeah, but that's not so specific to the topic. So we can address it, but yeah, it's not specific, yeah.
Mine was about labeling.
Labeling?
And we talked about how, of course, we have this negative labeling and that it can impact us.
Ah, yes.
So, but we've also mentioned that, on the other hand, we could also label things as good.
Okay.
Like, these positive traits that we view ourselves for, like, within our identity.
Okay.
So,
okay.
This is where I was going to take this is it always good to have positive labeling? Because doesn't that accentuate the reificatory self?
All right. Okay. So his question is, well, labeling, okay. So negative labeling is out. But what about positive labeling? Doesn't that reinforce our sense of I? What about labeling? Is there the danger of labeling in the sense that it reinforces our sense of I? Should we just stop thinking, in other words? Or talking? Yeah, talking and thinking. Right? I mean, in a way, because every thought is a process of labeling. That's a good one. Let's look at it. I mean, can we blame labeling for our self-centeredness, first of all? Does it reinforce it? If I keep thinking, this, is that to be blamed? That is a good way. That's a good way. It's a good topic. We could definitely address that. I need a second one as an alternative. Yes?
A clarification to maybe...
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. What is your clarification?
Absence of something a permanent... I've studied this, but now I can't remember. Is absence of something a permanent phenomenon?
Oh, is the absence of something permanent? The absence of something permanent. That is very philosophical.
And if so, because...
And I'm not sure, yeah. Mm-hmm.
A permanent phenomenon also has parts. So
Does a permanent phenomenon have parts?
So
okay, that's...
It says it does in the sheet.
It does. But does it? Is this a typo or is it true? Does something permanent have parts?
I mean, what I got, like an absence of a car
Yes.
in this room.
The absence of a car in this room. Is this permanent or not? Let me just get a car and drive it into the room. Is it still permanent?
Car cannot come, like, exist out of nothing. So if the car is in the room, absence is still...
Okay, now what I'm going to ask you to. What is the difference between permanent and impermanent? What does actually impermanent mean? Is therefore the absence of a car in this room, is the absence of monkey on my table, is that permanent or impermanent? Okay, figure it out. What does permanent and impermanent mean in the first place? What is actually permanent and impermanent? And does something permanent have parts or not? That's good that you figure it out. We had to figure it out on the debate ground, right? So that question, and so this is a question relating to dependence on parts. And the other question is dependence on labeling. So we've heard a lot about positive and negative, affirmative, non-affirmative labeling. But at the same time, is labeling a problem? Could that reinforce, as James puts it, or as he put it, could that reinforce our grasping at inherent existence? Good one, right? Okay. Could you also put them? Okay, great. So Venerable Droka is going to put them on the whiteboard, so you remember. And enjoy discussing it. Okay, so see you soon.